We all want the world to be a wonderful place and to have a happy life. And we often see things in our local community and the world that could be better, that we'd like to change. And there's different ways that we can be the change that we want to see in the world. We can have conversations, we can raise awareness, we can volunteer or work at organizations that are doing good things to positively impact society. We can donate to causes we believe in. Or in the case of our guest today, we can decide there isn't a viable solution and we're going to create the solution. And we're going to rally people in our community to make it a better place. So back in 2009, I was living in Los Angeles and I attended a food blogging conference when I had just started the Blender Girl food blog, and I met Amber Stott. She had her Awake at the Whisk food blog at the time. And we were just talking about being the change you want to see, community advocacy, and the food system in California. And I watched her create this incredible nonprofit organization that is literally changing the way people have access to fresh food in California. So it's a pretty incredible story, and I think one that is just going to get you fired up. So let's get the skinny from Amber Stott. When I was thinking about who my first guest was, it was a no-brainer. It was always going to be Amber because it is the ultimate "it has to be me" story, where you see something in the world that needs to change and you decide that you're the person to change it. And boy, is this a spectacular story. So if you are dreaming of changing something in your community and being part of the solution or providing the solution, this is the podcast episode for you. So Amber is an author. She's a speaker. She is an amazing cook and a food advocate, an incredible food advocate, genius fundraiser. And she is the founder and CEO of Food Literacy Center, which is an incredible nonprofit organization based out of Sacramento, California. They teach children how to grow their own food, cook their own food, and get excited about eating vegetables. So Amber has been instrumental in creating the Sacramento Food Film Festival. She is the host of the Raising Kale podcast. She's got a TEDx talk. She's got an incredible book that's helping thousands of children eat their vegetables. And she's just the most incredible person. So welcome, Amber. Thank you so much for being the first guest on It Has to Be Me.
Yay. Hi, Tess.
So let's just dive right in because there's just so many things I want to ask you and so many things I want our listeners to hear about that will help them, hopefully find their "it has to be me" moments within your story. So let's just start at the very beginning. So when we met, almost 15 years ago now in Los Angeles, it was my first food blogging conference and you were doing Awake at the Whisk and I just started the Blender Girl and we were walking across to these food trucks and you were telling me about your work in the nonprofit sector, and community service is just in your DNA, isn't it? So you grew up with two parents who were in community service.
Yeah, my dad was a principal and my mom ran our local library. So yes, I always knew I was not going to grow up to work for the man. And I didn't quite know what I would be when I grew up. I just knew I would probably want to do something that impacted my community.
Yeah. So when you went to college, tell everybody what you studied, because I think that often when we go to college and we decide we're going to study this or study that, and then we kind of veer off course, we sometimes don't give ourselves permission to see that thing that we did or that those things we did in the past intersect with what we want to do now. And I think you've got an amazing philosophy about how food intersects with, what you were studying in college and the things that you were doing before you founded Food Literacy Center.
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in comparative literature, which means you read literature in other languages. And then I have my master's in African studies and women's studies.
Yeah, so let's talk about going into the nonprofit world and then what that path looked like from leaving college, doing those studies. And I know you're fluent in Danish, which is so amazing. And I didn't know that about you actually until a few years ago. And then you went into the nonprofit sector. Let's just talk about the trajectory, because we don't just start a nonprofit, for anyone that's listening thinking, okay, well, how do you get to that?
Yeah. So essentially, when I left college, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. But as I read different job descriptions, thinking about where my talents lie, I was a strong writer. And so all the jobs that required writing in nonprofits also happened to be the fundraising jobs. So that's how I entered the nonprofit sector, was as the human that had to help raise the money. And so I worked for a variety of nonprofits throughout my career. And then around 2008, when all of the amazing food books started coming out, like Harvest for Hope and, Omnivore's Dilemma, I was reading all of them. And I was becoming very passionate, and I really needed to do something about it. I started my blog, Awake at the Whisk, but that wasn't enough. I was writing for our local Edible Sacramento, but still, I just felt like I needed to be doing something to change our community. And at the time, there weren't a lot of, like, the term food system and food movement really didn't exist. And we had food banks back then, but not much else. And so as I started interviewing like other peers that worked in food banks and trying to figure out where I could help, I started to realize that, like, the food bank folks would tell me, well, we're recognizing the problem of the rising rates of childhood obesity, and we want to switch and get, all the pastries and stuff off our shelves and replace it with more healthy stuff, but people don't want to take them. And we don't know how we can get people to eat more of these healthy fruits and vegetables. And I thought, oh, now here's a gap where I could have an impact. So I started Food Literacy Center to try to address the problem of childhood obesity, but also through that avenue of helping people understand what they can do with a raw cactus or eggplant.
Okay, so I just want to go back a step, because I'm sitting listening going, yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, that there's some problems. I'll go and volunteer. Wouldn't it be cool if somebody else started? Wouldn't it be cool if somebody else started that, or that was out there? That'd be awesome. I mean, that's what the majority of people do, including myself, right? I mean, I dream of starting a nonprofit, but I didn't do it, right? Or I haven't done it yet. I know that's what you're going to tell me, because I love you. So what was it in you that went, it has to be me? I've got the chops. I've got what it takes to do this.
Sure. I mean, context for the time in history that this was taking place is that so I started the nonprofit in 2011. So we were deep in the Great Recession. And what happened to the nonprofit sector was quite damaging. We had a lot of brain drain, because what was happening is that boards were scared, and so jobs were being cut left and right. And many of my peers lost their jobs multiple times throughout that Great Recession in this sector. And so, and I was included in that count, right? I had lost a job, a fundraising job, and was trying to decide what my next move was going to be. And I had two choices. I could either go to work for someone, or I could start my own thing. Either way, I was the fundraiser. So regardless, in a bad economy, I was reliant on my skill set to be able to succeed in my role. And I had been successful in my role and still lost a job. I had doubled the budget of one nonprofit in the recession, and then in 9 months had pulled another nonprofit out of the red. And so, ending up unemployed in those conditions, I really had to think long and hard. Do I want someone else in control of that decision for me? Or, based on the upheaval of that time, am I just going to go out on a potentially scarier limb, but a limb where I'm the boss? So that's the route I chose.
Oh, I mean, I love that old saying, if you're not the lead dog, the view never changes, right? And you can either help somebody else build their dream, or you can build your own, right? And use your superpower to build your own. Oh gosh, I mean, can you tell everybody the incredible synergy of what happened when we met, of meeting Jelena, and how that all played out with working with the California government? I mean, that's an incredible story of just actually seizing the moment and going, okay, I'm running with this.
Yeah, so I knew that I was going to start a nonprofit, and I had the idea a little bit inspired by what Andrew Wilder was doing with October Unprocessed. I thought, okay, we need an awareness month about food literacy, because I knew that people, well, for one, I made up the term and I made up the definition. So I knew that people didn't know what it was. And so I knew we were going to need to do something to create big awareness. And so I signed up for a food blog conference, and then I signed up for a ride share where you could find strangers who were willing to share a ride. And that's how I met Jelena, who happened to work in the California legislature. I didn't know anything about her. I just only had access to the link to her blog. And
thank you, universe.
Exactly. So she and I start driving down to LA, and we're just instant friends, totally hit it off. And she's telling me all about a postpartum awareness resolution that she had worked on in her work in the legislature, and was like, I totally know what you're thinking about, and I totally know how to do it, and I could walk you through it. And yeah, by the end of that conference, I had asked her to be a board member.
I mean, you really are a great example of don't ask, don't get, right? Yep. I mean, you really, really are. And you do it in the most beautiful way, that it's really hard to say no to you, right? I mean, and we'll talk about that in a second, because you've got such a great philosophy about that. That was such a pivotal month. We met Andrew Wilder, who did October Unprocessed, dear friend of ours, and Elise. I mean, so many people that we met that week are doing such incredible things. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. So talk us through this. I'm gonna lobby the government. I'm gonna get them to pass this resolution. I mean, again, another it has to be me moment that does that. And can you just also define food literacy for everybody that doesn't understand what that means, seeing as you created this term?
Yeah, food literacy is understanding the impact of your food choices on health, environment, and economy, and knowing that those impacts are not equitably experienced.
Wow, you've got that down. I mean, it's really incredible. So when you're just diving into these things, I mean, you are a generator. I mean, you make things happen. It is so inspiring. What are your superpowers? Like, what are your special gifts that you know that you can harness to make things happen?
Sure. I think together, words and action. Those are my two superpowers. So I'm pretty good with words, the written word in particular, where I have time to thoughtfully create what I want to say. And I can take very complex concepts and break them down for a kindergartner to understand, for example. And so that, and then combined with actually getting to work and creating action.
Yeah. So did those two things serve you well when you were lobbying the government to make that resolution pass? You were going to actually totally back it up.
Yeah, because part of the resolution is that you have to actually write the thing and put it in front of the legislators and then pitch your idea to them. So I was taking meetings with legislators and saying, hey, here's my idea, and would you be interested in being part of this? And it's interesting how much words do matter, right? So Jelena, who is coaching me about how to do it, we have a hearing, which is the first step in getting any bill passed, whether it's a resolution or another type of bill. And you have a hearing. And she said, usually the hearings, particularly for nonprofit resolutions, are just, very easy peasy. You go in, people love it. They say yes, they vote yes. Well, in our case, 5 people stood up to oppose our resolution because we had 2 words in there, local and organic. And we worked with our legislator afterwards and talked about options. And I was very much open to, okay, while we think eating organic is important, our audience that we're going to be reaching is very low income. And so likely that is out of their budget in the first place. We'd rather they're eating any carrot at all than to go to bat for whether it's an organic carrot or not. So we were fine removing the word organic. And then the word local, we just changed that to California grown. and we were good to go.
Right. So that's such a great example of being flexible and kind of, really being able to morph, into the situation. Gosh, it's really interesting to me, how you've been able to grow this organization. So can you just take us inside that process? Like, you decided that you were going to start this organization, Food Literacy Center. What happened next? You just went to Elise. You started going to somebody you knew, another dear friend of ours in the food blogging community, Elise Bauer, who started Simply Recipes, which was the biggest food blog in the world. She's since sold it. Just an incredible human. You knew Elise? You went to her and you shared your idea?
Well, what's funny about that story is I did know Elise, and I was 34 when I started Food Literacy Center. So she was a mentor of mine. I talked to her all the time, but never did it occur to me to say, hey, Elise, would you want to be on my board? I thought, she's too busy. She has, her plate full. No way would she want to be part of my teeny tiny idea. And she actually had popped over just to say hello to her at some point. And she was like, you should ask me to be on your board. And I was like, really? You would be on my board? So,
this is what I love about Elise. That's how she always does everything. You can blah, blah, blah. She's the ultimate impresario. And that you could blah, blah, blah. And I could blah, blah, blah. Like, she just prompts you. She's amazing like that.
So as a great mentor, she told me to ask her to be on my board. And I did. And it was an amazing decision. And she continues to be, I would say, I call it my broccoli brain trust, but one of the most important mentors in my life, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so incredible. So who are the trusted people that you go to when you don't know what to do, or you're unsure about a decision, to kind of really work through it and, get in the mess and in the weeds and, figure out what the path is?
I've actually received feedback on a review from my board members that this is another of my superpowers, is that I am not the type of person who will pretend that I have all the answers, and I always have an expert on the dial for most things. I don't try to go it alone. But of course there is my handful of ones that get more phone calls than others. Tess, you're one of them.
Oh, and what a thrilling story. Let's actually just not because it's me, but let's just tell that story of seizing the moment and really drawing upon your trusted sacred circle to find the answers. So Jamie Oliver and Alice Waters came to this event with Amber, and they have sent her an email saying that her program is the best program they've seen anywhere in the world, which is huge. And I remember exactly where I was when you called. Well, you texted me first and said, I need to ask you about this. I don't know what to do. This is such a huge opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I was standing in my backyard. I remember it vividly, that conversation. Just tell everybody that story, because it's such a great example of going, okay, I got to find a solution here. Let's draw on my resources. Okay, boom, let's put it into action. And the results were spectacular.
Yeah. So it was a surprise to us. One of our funders actually was arranging this visit, and they called and they said, hey, we have this top secret opportunity and we want to present it to Food Literacy Center. Are you interested? And they were going to have Jamie Oliver and Alice Waters and Ann Cooper coming to Sacramento. I think they were going to be doing some legislative work with this foundation. And as part of their visit, they also wanted to see programs that were doing similar work in our community. And so at the time, Food Literacy Center was really the only cooking program in Sacramento. We still are, actually, for kids. So so I was like, okay, this just happened. Who do I need to talk to make sure that we bring our A game? I've never worked with any players at this level. My first call was to you, Tess.
It was one of those moments, though, where I went balls to the wall and said, right, we are going to capitalize on this opportunity. This is huge. This is going to be a huge payoff in visibility. This is what you do. And I just remember going, this is what's going to happen. When people of that level come in, it is going to be so busy. They're going to be late. It's running over time. Everybody wants a piece of it. And they're going to like push you to the bottom and you're not going to get the photo op, the this, the that. And I went, okay, boom, this is what you say. And I remember you calling me going, played out exactly like that and I got the photo. But honestly, I mean, when you throw out advice and you go, gosh, I hope this is going to work, but anyway, it was one of those moments. But anyway, phew.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. So yeah, just tell everybody, what happened with that.
Yeah. So we had the opportunity. They granted us the opportunity to do more than sort of just the photo op, which was amazing. So we offered like that we wanted to actually cook a meal, and we also wanted to invite others, right? Because it's kind of like, sure, Jamie Oliver came and saw your program. I wanted other people in the room who would be the people left behind in Sacramento to support us in doing this work. So they granted us that opportunity. So I was able to invite elected leaders and board members and donors. And so we basically had our kids cook a beautiful little lunch. One of the recipes was my grandma's recipe, and Alice Waters was very complimentary. She loved all of the food, and Jamie Oliver got to do a little cooking demo with our students. And I remember one little girl being like, "He hugged me." And so it was, this amazing moment for our kids to know and feel like they were important enough that all of these people wanted to come and visit their program. And so they really rose up and they just, they had a beautiful experience. And yeah. And I got to have real meaningful conversations with both Jamie Oliver and Alice Waters and Ann Cooper, because at the time, for example, Food Literacy Center was only doing after school programming. And those two were in California really advocating for farm to school programming during the academic day. And I remember saying to them, well, why does it matter? Like I can, from a efficiency standpoint and a monetary standpoint, I can reach more kids in the after school setting and essentially have more higher impact for lower costs by being in after school. So what is the benefit to being during the school day? And they said it's political. You want during the school day because eventually we want the California school system to prioritize this as an academic subject. And look where we are today at Food Literacy Center. So,
1 school to 20 schools, right? I mean, it's just...
And we now have our first, the school district built us a school so that we could provide daytime education. Okay. So we have our first. Yeah.
We have to talk about this. Okay. Because Alice Waters has been an incredible mentor for you.
Yes.
So can you share with everybody the lesson about no that you learned from her? Because it's so powerful.
Yeah. So a few years after the Jamie Oliver and Alice Waters visit, our program had really started to take off. It was very popular with the kids, which meant it was popular with the school district. And so the school district had an amazing opportunity to take 2.5 vacant acres and partner with the city and turn it into a public park / student farm. But the school district themselves did not have the funding to operate any type of programming on the site. The city was willing to create it into a park, but the school district didn't have funds to add more staff and more programs. So they started looking for a nonprofit partner, and they came to Food Literacy Center. And at the time, we were working out of a portable. We didn't have brick and mortar. And so when they asked me if I'd operate a farm, I said, well, could you build me a headquarters and a cooking school? And oh yeah, maybe also a commercial kitchen for all the other schools that were providing services to in your district. And this is not a tiny ask.
And very unusual what happened. Can we just explain to everybody that this just does not happen? It's extremely unusual.
we think it's the first of its kind in the state, maybe in the nation. And so the school district essentially over the years, after much advocacy, said yes to this concept and spent their own $4.3 million to build this facility that we got handed the keys and got to move into. And I got to help design every aspect of it. So it was really built for our program in particular. But the piece where Alice Waters comes in is that so there's a small amount of funding. It's nominal. It's not a big pot, but it's significant to me because I'm a tiny nonprofit. So there is a $26,000 annual farm maintenance fee that the city pays to the school district to maintain this city park. And because the project doubles as a public park. And so the school district initially in the MOU that they put together, they were just keeping that funding. And we are operating at all of our programs in their district at no cost to the district, which is also unheard of. Every after school provider gets paid. And so I said, so I went to, so we're working on this MOU and I'm really upset that this 26,000 isn't in there. And separately, I attended my first training at Alice Waters Edible Schoolyard. While I'm there, she gives a talk to the group about the history of how Edible Schoolyard came to be. And in her conversation, she had been working with the school principal and she pitched a concept to him. He came back to her with a concept that was less than her dream. And so she said, no, thank you. At the time, she was like, I'm a successful restaurateur. I actually don't need this project. This is just a dream that I have. And she walked away, hoping that eventually he would see the bigger picture and come back and offer her the full project. And so I went up to her afterward and asked her more about this. I was like, wow, in the nonprofit sector, we say yes to anything and everything, right? We don't say no. Like, what gave you essentially the balls to do that? And again, she said, I had something that was successful. I didn't need this. And I thought about that and I thought, I don't need this cooking school. Like, I'm successful as a nonprofit. My program is sought after. It would sure make life easier. And so I had a meeting to sign the MOU and I told the school district, I'm going to wait. I don't like this MOU the way it is. And I don't think I would have had the courage to do that if I hadn't heard her story and seen that it worked out for her too. So
yeah, I mean, such a great example of no being a really powerful choice because it means saying yes to something that's a better fit. But I want you to tell everybody and share your philosophy about no. Because when you said to me, I never hear no, Tess, I'll never forget the day that you said that to me. And I've stolen it because it's so fabulous. So can you please share it with everybody else? Because it's such a great way to move through the world.
Yeah. So it's, I learned this early on as a nonprofit professional doing fundraising because it's kind of best practice or sort of a standard training that you're supposed to ignore the no's and focus on the next yes, because you're gonna hear 10 no's between every yes when you're asking folks for money. And so that's where I first heard it, but I feel like I apply it to everything. And in fact, even when someone tells me no, I'm thinking, do you mean like just no today and maybe tomorrow you'll say yes? Or maybe no to doing it this way, but we could for sure do it another way. So I never ever hear the no. I'm simply hearing I didn't present it to you in the way that you'll say yes to right now. So I definitely approach pretty much everything. And the other part of when I started this nonprofit, in fact, I ignore the no's. I intentionally do not listen to them because there are going to be a lot of people I have noticed, particularly when I was starting a nonprofit, because everybody says they're going to start a nonprofit. And so everyone rolls their eyes when you tell them that you're doing that. And even from people who you know and respect, right? So being able to ignore that and look beyond and look for the people who say yes is really, really important.
What's your biggest fear then, if you're just going to ignore the no's?
I don't really feel like I have too many fears.
You say that and now you're going to tell me one, because we all have them.
I am always aiming for the perception of success, because I fear, you know what I fear the most is those emails where you send out the email and it's got an important message in it, but you got the date wrong, and literally everyone hits reply and all they can comment on is the typo in the date. And they've completely ignored the fact that you just invited them to, I don't know, say your ribbon cutting, right?
Right. So the perception, the optics, the I'm not putting my best foot forward. Is that what you mean? Like, I don't want to be perceived to be sloppy or not on the ball or not bringing my A game. So the fear of disappointing others, would that be a way to say it?
I mean, I'm okay disappointing others, but I need them to see it in a different light, right? Because I don't see my personal failures as fails. I see them as something that I've learned from. Like, by golly, I'll never send out another email without having a second person check to see if if I've gotten any typos in there. But it's managing that perception, I think, that drives me to this level of perfection that can sometimes show up as if it's fear.
Right. Okay. So I love, you are such a big tester. I really love this, right? Of testing things. And I like your perception, or the way that you hold the idea of failure. You know, like, one of my favorite quotes is the Nelson Mandela one, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And you really embody that, right? Where it's just always, okay, so that didn't work quite the way we wanted to. What are the lessons here? So just talk us through how you teach and model that as a leader of an organization.
And people, when they interview here, ask that, like, how do you address failure? And I've heard my staff's responses, and they're like, oh, I don't know that we feel like we fail here. So I do think it's hopefully I have done an okay job of imbuing this in the culture of the organization, but we are constantly, we're in food. So it's almost like recipe testing, right? Like, you know that the first time you create a recipe, it's not the best version. You know, it's just version 1, and you're going to have to go through version 2, 3, and 4 to get to the best one. And so that's the best way I can describe it. Like, we are very used to, as a team, testing things. We're a brand new organization that makes things up, like terms like food literacy. We invented our whole curriculum and program. And so and this building, it's brand new. We just got the keys to this beautiful cooking school, right? So every single thing that we do here has never been done anywhere else before. The only people who know what we're aiming to do are us. And so I think I've really tried to embed that in the culture of, like, we know where we're going. And if somebody shows up to, say, our event or our cooking class and XYZ goes wrong, the only people who know that it was supposed to go another way is us. So we really try to approach most things in that way. Of course, some things are more public than others, and you really want to lean in, but and in order to not have those kinds of failings, like, I don't know, a recipe that explodes on you, we test everything. We run through scenarios constantly. Like, you should see our meetings just to put on, like, the simplest of events, because we are thinking through every element of the customer experience, every element of, what if people sit this way instead of that way? Or, if they're, if the air conditioner is on and we want it warm, like, we're just literally thinking through everything. So
The other thing about your process that I really like, I think a part of deciding it has to be me and what has to be you and what is yours to hold is letting go of what is not yours to hold anymore. What does not have to be me anymore. And sometimes we can stay too long at the table. Well, I mean, I promised everyone and I said this is what I was doing and who I was 10 years ago, but now it sort of doesn't fit and we still keep kind of, trying to beat that dead horse. One thing that is another superpower of yours is that you're able to adapt and let go of things in order to keep your eye on the prize and, do what needs to be done to move the organization forward. So, you starting with a wing and a prayer and a dream with one person, and now there's 10 of you, right? And 8 board members, is that right?
Yeah.
So, it's growing, right?
Yes.
So you've had to let go of some things that you used to do before. So can you talk everybody through your time audit process? Because that's an amazing tool, and how that helps you identify, should I be doing this or does this need to be delegated to somebody else?
Yeah. So I use something called box calendaring, where literally every hour of my day I have what I'm going to be doing. And that's to protect, so that, because I used to work 13-hour days, 7 days a week, and it's not sustainable. So in order to protect not pushing everything to the weekend or everything to the evening, I started this box calendaring, and it is amazing. But the other thing it does for me, and what I'll ask my staff to do a couple of times a year, is we basically do a time audit. So I'm looking at that calendar and going, what am I spending the majority of my time on? And does it align with what I say my goals are and the things that only I can do for the organization? Like, is this a thing that I need to be retraining a staff member to get it off my plate because it's now their time to learn it? And we do that very often. I think, one, because nonprofit budgets are so lean, you're just constantly like, and what else can a volunteer help us with? So it's like having my eye constantly on, where are we trying to get? And then that means I have to be super efficient. So am I using my time the best way that I can to get there? I'm just constantly doing that.
Yeah. And another part, that I hear people, in nonprofits all the time or companies is founder syndrome. So I know that you're hyper aware of that. You and I have talked about that before, about when it will be time where, the baton needs to be passed or something. Like, not that I'm wanting you to do that, because I know it's not that time right now, but I know that's something that's always in the back of your mind, right?
Oh, yeah. And as I get older, it's certainly more front of my, and in COVID, I was like, I knew I was going to be sending my team out into the world, myself included, before we had vaccines or knew we would have one or even knew what the heck was going on. So that started to come front of mind to me, is like, how will this thing exist if and when I'm not here? And I've always,
because it really is like your baby.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You put it first in everything, don't you?
I do. Yes. And I think the thing that I have kind of always conscientiously done is, it's not just about the success of me and just about the success of Food Literacy Center, but how are we building or rebuilding systems so that other people can replicate this work, so that there are systems in place that other people can plug into this work. So for example, getting this cooking school, having our school district build this, we have a 10-year MOU. So I have protected this entity to exist here. So if I'm gone and the board hires someone else, we get to still be here, right? And significantly, the school district, through this process, has changed its policy about how much of their budget they spend on Title I or low-income elementary schools and facilities projects. So now other schools where we teach within the district are also being improved through the facilities budget. So there's ripple effects that will be in perpetuity because of this project. And another is thinking bigger and thinking longer term. It's like, what happens to the farm to school movement in not only my community, but in the state when there's no longer an Alice Waters or an Amber Stott, for example. And so in 2017, I advocated at the state capitol to create a department of our program of farm to school within California's Food and Agriculture Department, just like they have at the federal level in the USDA. We advocated that they create that here in California. And in the pandemic, the governor put its first funding for these projects. So there's a permanent department, and hopefully we will continue to advocate so that at some point there's also a permanent part of the budget carved out for granting out grants to programs like ours. So there are things that I'm thinking about.
Sorry, go ahead. It's just such a great example. Sorry, I interrupted you. Of be the change, hang the lantern, be the example. These things didn't just land in your lap. You made them happen. You saw that something needed to be fixed. You advocated. You did the work. One of the things another thing that I'd love you to share is just that you're always telling your story. You're always putting your story out there, and you also are always figuring out where your story fits into the much bigger story.
Yes.
So is that something that comes to you naturally? Did you learn that from your parents? How did you pick that up?
So in one of my first nonprofit jobs, I attended a lot of PR training, and a mentor of mine very early on, he said, you need to read the newspaper every single day, and you need to constantly be thinking about how your cause fits in with what's going on in the world. And it was awesome advice. I also tend to be already a strategic thinker, so it made a lot of sense to me. I would say the space where this, I think, the times where this matters the most is something like the pandemic, right? Because we're a hands-on, in-person cooking program for kids. School's closed. Like, many nonprofits actually disappeared in that time because they couldn't make themselves relevant to the current time and situation. They lost funding and they couldn't keep their doors open. So I think noticing what was going on, like one of the very first things we did, I was like, okay, what are the skills that we have that everyone's talking about? People are staying at home and they're buying up all this stuff like rice and beans, and they maybe don't know how to cook that stuff. We have those skills. We could be putting our existing recipes online. Other things, we know about food safety. We're all food handler certified. What are the things that people are afraid of? They're bringing home and washing their packaging, right? We can give tips and tricks that we have been using with our kids, and we can share that knowledge, right? And then we translated that when we had to go out into the world. And we started right alongside the school lunch program. So school lunch right away started distributing school lunches curbside. And thankfully, I already had an awesome relationship with our director of the school lunch program. And she called me and she said, Amber, I want Food Literacy Center to partner with us. What ideas do you have? And she and I came up with that she thought we should distribute fruits and vegetables. And I was like, what if we took the recipes that we're already making with our kids before the pandemic started, that we know they already know how to cook and like, let's package those like a recipe kit and we'll distribute those. And those to this day continue to be one of our most in-demand programs. We thought it would disappear when schools returned, but because rates of food and nutrition insecurity tripled during the pandemic, those rates have not returned to their pre-pandemic levels. So we continue to need to distribute these recipe kits in addition to our classroom programs. So staying relevant and really understanding what's happening and being able to see the need and create something meaningful to just continue. Yeah, it's really important.
I want to go back to the pandemic for just a minute because you keep circling around this. It's very easy. You're such a self-motivated person to go, it has to be me. I'm getting out there. I'm doing it. You are asking your team to put their lives on the line and decide it has to be me as well. right?
Yes.
So how do you do that as a leader? How do you really instill or inspire other people to step up and go, it has to be me too?
Yeah. That's an emotional one. Yeah, I mean, I knew that is what I was asking. And I also knew that not a single person on my team would say no. I knew this. And I did make it their choice, right? I brought it to the team. I think everyone that goes into nonprofit really is here to serve, right? That is why you choose these jobs over something that might pay better or have better hours or whatever have you. And yeah, I think I would have ideas at the start of the pandemic, but I would sort of facilitate a conversation, sort of saying, okay, like I just walked you through, what are the skills we already have? I could have said, here's the skills we already have, guys. What do you want to do with that, right? Like I could have just handed it to them, but instead I said, what are the skills we have? Let's whiteboard this, right? And so I kind of use a facilitation technique to bring them into the conversation so that they're sort of contributing to the bigger idea.
And they're taking ownership of the movement.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I would say that the pandemic for me, we really had leadership at every level, right? Because somebody took on, I said, okay, somebody's going to have to develop our plan for how we work with volunteers. Somebody's going to have to develop our plan for how do we mark the ground with tape? How are we social distancing, right? And every single person raised their hand for a different part of it to say, I'll develop that piece. And yeah, I can't tell you how exactly they said yes. I knew they would, and they did.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear that you create a safe, empowering space where people are invited to step up and make their contribution and feel great about it and take ownership of it, right? I mean, that's what great leaders do. I don't even need to ask you, how do you stay open to new ideas? Because you are the most open person that I know. What I want to ask you is, how do you remember the lessons? So we've talked about your philosophy about no. We've talked about your philosophy about failure and remembering the lessons. How do you hold the lessons and then recall them to when you're working through your next challenge? So that you don't, repeat things before, because that's a really great skill to have.
So to give the pandemic yet another example, it was one of the strongest moments for Food Literacy Center as a team. And I thought, how did we do this? Because we just did it in the moment. You know what I mean? And I was like, we need to go back, reflect on it, and capture what we did, so that we can replicate it as an organization again and again and again. And do you know Simon Sinek's book, Together is Better? Have you seen that little book? So,
share that little pearl, because that is a big one.
Yeah. So we were back in person very early on. And I took that book and we sat around the table and we read it together as a team. And then I had taken 3 of the sort of gems out of that book, 3 of the little captions, and I had put them on like poster board. And I was like, okay, pick whichever one calls to you the most.
Well, now you've got to share the 3 with us.
Oh gosh.
Or paraphrase them.
Yeah. One is essentially about we take risks and we're not afraid of them. Shoot, I wish I had them on the tip of my tongue. But anyhow, we put those up on whiteboards, and then everybody went to a different one. And I just had them write, like, okay, how do we take risks? What do we do? Right? And what did we do through the pandemic? And we've done it repeatedly, multiple times since, because we want to institutionalize what we were doing. And so, for example, that leadership at every level, that comes out of that storybook. And we really did create that in the pandemic.
What's the proverb that you share, though?
Oh, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I know that
Yes.
you really live that, you know.
Yes.
It's oh gosh, you know, through this central drive that you have, how would you, because one of your superpowers is simplifying complex issues, right? And being able to explain it to people really quickly, right? That's why you're such an incredible fundraiser and how you get everybody on board, which is amazing. How would you describe the central beliefs that drive your choices that you just keep coming back to again and again, like you checking in for the barometer of what a yes or a no is?
Yeah. Fairness, honesty or integrity, communication, and creativity. And also one of my values is work. I'm from the Midwest. So
Is community would be one of your words too, wouldn't it, though? You're just so plugged in to that, right? To connection.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a big one. So you're such a doer and a generator, like I was saying. What's something you wish you had done sooner?
Um prioritize my health. That one
Ooh.
is difficult for me. I will give up most things for most of the things that are what I consider just mine and somewhat selfish. I will always give those up for food literacy center. So
But let's be more specific though, because you still eat really well. You're talking about
yes.
exercise and stuff, right? In terms of your health, are you? Or what are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, although there are times where, for example, I'm eating a bean burrito 5 nights a week because all I can do is open a can of beans and chop an onion and I'm not cooking, right? And so sometimes the cooking falls to the wayside. I'm still eating healthy, but I'm not getting what my body needs as far as variety or some of that.
So how do you check in with yourself to recalibrate and bring yourself back into balance and just sort of say to yourself, okay, things are a little bit out of whack here. I know I've got to focus on this over here with Food Literacy Center, but my health is suffering. I haven't gone for a run in a while because you love running on the trails, right? Like
Yes.
that's like one of your happy places.
Yeah.
So
And
give us
yeah.
a little talk to Amber session. You
You
know,
see
what are
how
some of the things that
uncomfortable
you
this is
say?
making me?
I
um
know. Let's you know, we gotta you know, deal with this.
yeah, it is still a challenge. Like I
For
so
all
I
of us.
yes. So I
Yeah.
block 2 days a week, 2 work days. The weekends, obviously I know I can do my own thing, but on the weekdays I block an hour 2 mornings so that I will come in an hour late on those 2 mornings so that I can run. Um, However, I that is the first time slot in my calendar that I will give back to Food Literacy Center when there is a need, right? When we can't quite all find a meeting that works or there's a funder who can only meet at a certain time, I will give it up. So it's very difficult for me to not feel selfish, even though I feel like it's where I come up with creative solutions. I feel like my runs help keep me less stressful. I'm way better person to be around when I'm running. There's certainly all kinds of arguments and benefits for it, but
Yeah, but you
it's
know, it's that thing about superpower is our Achilles heel when not held in balance, right? So your tenacity, your dedication, your unwavering commitment, you know, you have so many superpowers, as we all do, right? But when not held in balance, that's what prevents you from going for the run,
yeah.
investing in your self-care. I just want to pick apart something you just said because about feeling selfish when you take time for you,
Hmm.
for self-care. And I think that we all struggle with finding that balance between self-care and care for others. This is something that comes up in my office hours every single week, particularly for women. We
Yeah.
feel selfish spending time on us.
Yes.
So I love that you've been so honest and transparent about that because it's certainly something I struggle with. And I know so many people in our community do. So again, how would you talk yourself out of that if you're like, okay, I've put these 2 days aside, but for the past 4 weeks they've completely gone by the wayside. Okay, now it's time to kind of actually spend some time over here. What does that conversation in your head look like?
I won't let it go 4 weeks. So that's better than
I
what
was
it
giving
used to
you
be.
some grace there, sister.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I used to. In fact, there were years where I didn't run at all, or exercise at all, other than like some hiking. So I think it just comes down to I just have to do it, right? Like my sanity. So I'll just tell myself, you are going to take that run. You have put in the time. It's okay. Like today, everything will be fine. Like the world will not implode if you aren't there that hour. Yeah. So, but it's, I do have to convince myself, or maybe I have to work extra later that week just to justify it to myself.
So who helps you hold things in balance? Brendan, your husband? Is it friends? Is it family? You know, who are the mirrors that present themselves to you, those voices of truth, saying, okay, Amber, it's time to kind of rein this in, you know, you got to look after yourself a bit better, or, you know, what happens there?
I think I'm the only one who's doing it around my health for sure. As far as
I'm putting my hand up to join that little conversation now.
Thank you. I would say though, as far as like humility, to make sure that I stay grounded is for sure my husband.
Oh, honey, you're one of the most grounded people I know. But that's humble and beautiful. But yeah, he's pretty amazing for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's pretty amazing. You know, I want to close with just some stories about how it gets real in a nonprofit, right? Because what are some of the things that have just been so joyful and beautiful about getting to be you that it has to be me, right? Like, so, I mean, these incredible things that have happened, you know, in Food Literacy Center, you know, that got to be you. What are some of the most fun things about being you?
The best thing is obviously getting to play with the kids. I absolutely love it. I don't get to do it as much as when I first started the nonprofit, but I have to, again, make time and make sure I do that. I love pulling up to this beautiful building that, I still can't believe I pinch myself every day that we get to be here and that it materialized.
Oh, again, you made that happen. But it's good to sit in gratitude for it, but you made it happen. I watched it every step of the way and it was thrilling.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And getting to be a spokesperson for the cause, I do really enjoy that. And I do love how creative, like we're a nonprofit that gets to be fun and punny, you know? And we really do have a lot of fun with our work. So I really enjoy the creative side of Food Literacy Center. Yeah.
You've got to tell the story about the cows and the sheep and the, you know, the animals and the farm. And I mean, because, you know, listen, when you know, and I'm sure those of you listening are thinking, gosh, this woman, she's done these incredible things. And, you know, when you see successful people, you're like, it's so glamorous. Let's just take everybody inside some of the more unglamorous parts of being you.
Yes. So one of the goals in our new space is that we want to have animals because kids who have experienced trauma can learn nurturing by working with animals. So we had some sheep that a farmer friend, lent us. And we know nothing. We have no experience. And so we set up some picnic tables as a barrier because we owned nothing. It was like the first month we were here and we didn't have a fence or anything. So we put some picnic tables as a barrier on our beautiful back patio that goes up against our cooking classroom. And I came in on a Saturday to check on the sheep. And they had, of course, jumped over the picnic tables and made a home, more like a bathroom, on our back patio. And there was sheep poop everywhere. So I immediately got online and ordered a dog poop scoop. And came in early the next day to make sure I had picked it all up before the staff came in.
Well, that's it's a real it's gotta be me moment. No one else is cleaning it up. Let me do that. Oh gosh. Oh jeez. Oh, that's hilarious. That's so funny. Oh man, that was like just an oxytocin rush right there. A good belly laugh with you is, the greatest medicine. What's your dream for Food Literacy Centre, and how you want to model this thing that you've created and being part of this movement for the rest of the country, let's say? What would be your big dream?
My dream for Food Literacy Center is to essentially be able to reach all the kids in our district. So we're only in 15 schools in Sac City Unified, and there are 40 Title I elementary school or low-income schools. So we haven't even grown to blanket our own district yet. So that's my dream for Food Literacy Center, which is a very practical dream, I think, but also still a long ways to go. For the field of food literacy and farm to school, my dream is that Food Literacy Center can be viewed as the model, that we can be the point at which data is collected and given to our legislators as fodder so that they can help us fight to ensure that farm to school programs eventually become a requirement in our school districts in the state of California, if not nationally, because it really, we see the change every single day with our kids in terms of what they're eating. 50% of Americans currently are sick from what they're eating, from their diets. And we can prevent that if we can get to our kids. And what they're learning is very much STEM-based. And there's so much research showing that when kids can learn something by doing it hands-on, difficult subjects like science and math, those topics are more likely to stick than if they were being lectured at, for example. So there's just so many synergies. And I am grateful we're in a school district that gets that synergy. Like, they understand that our students' health is wrapped up in their learning. And I just think that when we can get to that place as a state and as a country, our kids are going to be better off, but so is our society, because this is costing us billions of dollars as taxpayers to help people once they already are sick. Let's maybe make sure they don't get sick in the first place. And I do think that our schools have to be part of that solution.
Yes. Thank you so much for being part of that solution in California. And I am just so excited about the next installment of Food Literacy Centre. So you can learn more about Food Literacy Centre at foodliteracycentre.org. You can connect with Amber at Chief Food Genius. Is that not the best handle on social media you've ever heard of? We will put how you can connect with Amber and Food Literacy Centre in the show notes and on our website at ithastobeme.com. Amber, thank you so much for joining. I want to close with one thing. What would you say to everybody listening? Everyone's got a dream in their heart. They've got something they're dreaming about, and something's holding them back from taking action on it. What would you say to somebody who's dreaming of starting something?
You'll never know unless you try it. And the best time to start is today.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Another one of my favorite quotes is, "Take a leap and build your wings on the way down."
Oh, that's a good one. I love it. Love it. Oh, what a great way to close. Thank you so much, my dear friend. I'm just so grateful that you're in the world. So thank you so much for being the first guest. I'll remember this forever.
Oh, well, thank you, Tess. Love you. Thanks for having me.
Love you too. Bye. Oh, isn't she gorgeous? What a fantastic first interview to start this podcast. I'm so excited. So many good takeaways from this conversation. I mean, the big one is be the change you want to see in the world, and community change starts with you. So how are you going to participate in making the world around you a better place? But some of the broader takeaways for me were don't ask, don't get, just ask. Do you want to be involved? Can you do this for me? Do you want to participate? The worst thing that's going to happen is someone will say no, but they may just surprise you, and it may open all kinds of opportunities and possibilities. The other big one for me was the story about Alice Waters not being afraid to say no if it doesn't align with your vision, and waiting for the yes that really feels like the one that you want to give, that's going to take you where you want to go. So I hope you found this as inspiring as I have. I can't wait to hear what you think. I want to hear about your It Has To Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.